All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. It's 7 o'clock. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to have 3 song leaders and then an invitation song. If you will, go ahead and grab a song book. 387, go ahead and mark that for your invitation song. 387, Joshua will lead that at the appropriate time. Tonight we have AJ, we have Carter, and then we have Andrew going to lead us a song. And then, like I said, Joshua's going to lead our invitation. Come on, guys. AJ and Coda is going to lead us on.
548, Lily of the Valley, first verse. And a friend in Jesus, he's everything to me. He's a fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow, he's my comfort. In trouble, he's my stay. He tells me every care on him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul.
Trust and obey. 9:15. May walk with the Lord and light up His land. Love and glory is on our way. To others who is goodwill, and to those with love still, and the those who trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey.
$851, 851, I'll fly away. First verse. 851. If you have it, let's sing. Some glad morning when this life is born, fly away to a home across the western shore.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome out on Wednesday night. For the few minutes I have tonight, I'm going to talk about predictability and the influence behind that. What got me thinking about predictability was, one thing, I'm very predictable. You can ask my family, they'll tell you all my quirky predictability type things that I do. I'm not going into them, but they'll tell you that I am very, very predictable. But what got me thinking about it was last Wednesday, I think it was, I was leaving the job site and I got in my truck and I took my phone out and threw it up on the magnet on my dash there. And I don't know if y'all's phone does this, probably does, I don't know. It's not here to be a Apple versus Android debate here, but my Apple phone said, East Walker, 20 minutes, take this route. That's what my phone said. So our phones are always learning about us, they're predicting us, they're trying to figure out, how to pattern us. And that's what it was doing. I thought it was interesting. I said, it's Wednesday. It knew where I was supposed to be going. Tuesday it would have said head home, right? That's what it always says. Most days I put on the dash, it says home, it's this far, and take this route. I thought that was interesting. Then I saw the spiritual application to it, that through our predictability, it can be a great influence on others around us, a great influence. Somebody got the sound on up there. Take my glasses off so I can see, which is counterintuitive, I know, but I'm at that age. So, in John, in chapter 13, probably familiar with these verses, 34 and 35, talks about a new commandment that was given them, that they were to love one another. Then in 35, he says, "By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another." People will know we're his disciples because we have love. That's one way of displaying who we are as Christians. For time's sake, I don't give much time tonight, but for time's sake, you could go over to Galatians and look at the fruit of the Spirit, right? And go through all those things and see if you're displaying those different fruits of the Spirit throughout the day in front of your friends, your family, your co-workers. But I'm going to read just a few verses out of Matthew, a very familiar passage, Jesus speaking. It's in chapter 5, verses 13 and following. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." For emphasis, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. How do we influence? One way, again, I said be predictable, right? It's weird that I mentioned the GPS on my phone. Now, I was going to make this point that, do most people call you guys between 7 and 8 o'clock on Wednesday night? Most people know you aren't calling you between 7 and 8 o'clock on Wednesday night because they know where you're at Bible class, right? It was weird because I was headed over here, and by coincidence, my mom called me on the way over here, and you know what first thing she said? "I know you're on the way to church, but can you answer this question?" I'm predictable. She knew where I was headed. But through that predictability, it's a good influence. She knew I was headed to church. People know us. They know where we're going to be on Sunday, where we're going to be on Wednesday. It's a good predictor of what we do. But the passage here says, don't hide your light. And I'm of the belief with this passage that we can't hide the light. I'm of the belief with this passage, if you're a true Christian, there's no way you're hiding that light. I don't know how many of y'all do this as a family, but every time we go to the beach, when the sun goes down, we get the flashlights, go down to the water, and we'll chase those crabs up and down the coast. I don't know who all does that. But if you do, and you go down there, you can see flashlights up and down that beach forever. And you can see them away. They can't be hid. And we need to be that way as well. Another example is if you like to deer hunt, and you go out before daylight, somebody can be coming through the woods 3 ridges over with their headlamp on, and you'll see that light coming through the woods. Why? Because you can't hide light in darkness. There's no way. And in a world of darkness, If you're being a good Christian, people are going to see that. They're going to see that light in us. That's all I had to say for tonight. But if there's anything that is amiss, anything going on in your life that you need help with, not just this subject here, but anything, if you're having any kind of problems at all, you know you've got people here that'll sit with you, that'll pray with you, that'll talk you through it. Just let us know, and if something we can do right now in this instance, just come forward this time.
.387, we'll be singing the first verse. Tell me the story of Jesus, right on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that ever was heard. Tell how the angels in chorus sang as they welcomed his birth. Glory to God in the highest, peace and good tidings on earth. Tell me the story of Jesus, right on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that ever was heard.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to see each of you here tonight at the East Walker Church of Christ. If you are visiting with us, please let us stick around so we can see you and talk to you. We have several things that we need to make mention of. First of all is our upcoming Men's Day on February 15th, and that's the one flyer I didn't grab. They are on the back, so if you would like to see the flyer and then pass it out, pick one up on your way out, okay? We are looking forward to that day. The theme for it is, Are You Strong Enough? So looking at it from the idea of we as men need to be strong, don't we? We also have a grief and loss seminar. This will be at the 6th Avenue Church of Christ, February 7th through the 9th. So if you'd like more information about that, it'll be up. Also, the Parish Church of Christ on the 31st through February 2nd. We'll be having a lesson by Vance Hutton from Double Springs. It'll be on things eternal, things that matter most. So, encourage you to be aware of all of the things that are going on in our congregation, also the ones that are going on around in the area as well. Also, remember, kids, we've moved our Bible Bowl to March here. It's the last Sunday, whichever Sunday that is, the last Sunday in March. So keep that in mind. We also need to make sure that we keep in mind Mike Fowler, his procedures and things that they're going to be doing for him, be praying for him. Also, Lynn Brown is still in the hospital at Jasper. She is essentially, I think they said that she's having or in congestive heart failure. So that's going to be doctor's visits, medicine, things to get that under control. So be praying for her that they can do what's appropriate in that situation. Are there any others that we need to update or add to our prayer list? Oh, definitely need to continue to keep Tommy in our prayers with treatments that he's going to be going through. Still glad to see him here with us, though. Yes, sir. Paige Abner's mother, Brenda, still in the hospital, so be mindful of her. Bert Harbin moved to Ridgeview today. Say the name one more time. Shayna Futrell. Lots of back surgeries and recovery from that, so be prayerful and mindful of her as she recovers and the family as well. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Oh, no. Okay, well, let's be mindful of that then as well. Any others? All right, well, as I normally do, I have forgotten to ask somebody to lead a prayer, so I'll do it again. If you would, let's bow our heads and be mindful of those that we have mentioned here, also of the events that we as a congregation are involved in. Our dear loving and righteous and almighty Heavenly Father, we are thankful for the day and the life that you have given to us and the ability that we have to pray and to come to you and express our needs and our wants and the problems and the issues and the joys and the thanksgiving that we have in our life. We thank you so much for Jesus and the hope of salvation that we have through him. We ask you to please be with our number that are sick, those that we have mentioned, those that we have been praying for. Help those in the world that they may have their eyes opened and their hearts open to Christ. Help us to be lights to the world. Help us to shine and reflect your glory in whatever part of the world we may live. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Class. How are you doing? So she had a wreck?
Yeah, truck hit her.
Oh, my.
She just found out they were going to put a trach into her, and so she was
man.
going over there, and this big trailer truck hit her.
Well, of course it would happen then, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's when they normally do. Well, hey. Well, at least I'm a little bit ahead then. All right, we are continuing our study in the book of Esther, so if you would, go ahead and open there. Esther chapter 3. I hope you forgive me, I'm still a little bit hoarse and raspy from the last week, but we'll muddle through somehow. I want to go ahead and encourage you again about the questionnaire forms that I had mentioned once or twice. I want to ask how many years each of you have been a Christian, because some of you probably could answer a number that's longer than I've been alive. So, but the thought is that doesn't mean that you know everything, right? I'm sure there's one or two things that I might know, but I'm sure there's a bunch of things that you know that I don't know. Hopefully, at least that's the way it's supposed to work, right? So my thought is, even if you just want to write down a thought on this to say, hey, here's some answer, or here's the question I had when I was a kid, and if I had seen this verse or that verse, or after I experienced this, this is how I was able to deal with the temptation, or I hope you get the thought that I'm going for here. But if y'all would like to do something like that, it might be helpful for me. It might be helpful for those younger than you as well. So those are on the what do we call it now? The Welcome Center? Is that the name we've given it, Maury? Have we titled the Welcome Center yet? Is that what? Oh, yeah, it was a joke anyway. Don't worry about it. It didn't matter. A coffee bar, okay. Whichever we want to put. I might hide the donuts, but I'd go for it. But anyway, the thought is I want to give you guys a chance to maybe give some wisdom that you've learned in a way that the kids might be willing to accept if it's a question. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to say something. Andy is a new convert, and
I don't think he forgot it yet.
Kevin was over at our house last night. We were talking about Bible studies. I put my brother's a preacher in Florida. He's 82. And Andy commented, he's told me this before. When he gets up on the thing, every verse that he goes over pops up on the screen. And Andy tries to look them up, and he said he likes the fact, because he told me when he first started coming to church here, he wanted to go to a church that went just by the Bible. And I told him if it didn't, we couldn't go somewhere else. But I just wanted to say that in front of everybody, because unless somebody tells us, we don't realize they're a new person in the church. And we grew up in church,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us, and we know how the scriptures passed it. But Andy double checks when you can't.
Well, and I'm appreciative of Christians of all ages because it keeps all of us in check, and that's what it should do. Amen. So, again, for the questions, Andy, maybe you can phrase it as questions. You know, here's some past experiences I had, and here's how I got through them, or whatever. Anyway, though, again, just a way for y'all to express some wisdom, some thoughts in a way that the kids might be willing to accept. All right, again, Esther chapter 3. I've already thanked him, but thank Alan for taking over last week. He said y'all got through about verse 6. Does that sound correct? That's great, because I was probably going to spend even longer than him on those 6 verses. I want to boil down my main thoughts for the first 6 verses here, and that is, who is Haman? In this account, who is he? Not everybody at once. Who is Haman?
He's a descendant of Agag.
All right. Right there in the verse, he's a descendant of Agag. Now, Agag we connect to the Amalekites. Amalekites would have a reason to be distrustful or hate the Jews. So Haman already has a generational hereditary hatred of the Jews. So, what position is Haman in? All right. He would be one of the king's advisors, but in the beginning of, well, let me see if it's chapter 3 or chapter 4. Yeah, beginning of chapter 3, he gets promoted to this higher station. Essentially, he becomes the advisor of the advisors. I brought up Daniel a few classes ago, and you know how he was put in that position of being over all of the king's magistrates and councils. This is a similar position. So he's the second to the king. So, who can tell the second to the king what to do? Just the king. Essentially, he is a force to be reckoned with. So he goes through this. We have this account of Mordecai, and what does Mordecai not do? or is unwilling to do? Bow down to him. Now, I want to stress here, does God tell us not to be obedient to the governments that are over us? No, we're supposed to pay our taxes, right? We're supposed to obey the speed limit. We're supposed to X, Y, Z. So is that what Mordecai isn't doing? It's the idea of worship. In this culture, at this time, kings thought of themselves as gods on earth. They thought if through luck or chance or through, the God's divine will, they were able to rise to king, then that means there was something special about them. Think of all the Greek mythology stories where, people are half deity or, they have God's blood in them or some phrasing of that. It's that idea, that concept. They think that they are better and more powerful than the rest of us. And by extension, the people they employ, the closer they are to them, the more godlike those people are. You understand the thought process here? All right. So we have Haman, we have Mordecai, we have this individual that won't bow down and worship the second in command. So what does Haman do? What's his decision on this? Not just take care of Mordecai, but kill off everybody. But even in that account, I think it's interesting to note that it was other people that seemed to egg Haman on. Mordecai just seemed to be sitting by the gate and just being himself. And Haman would walk by. And these other people are like, why don't you have to bow down like we are? Why don't you have to, worship him? And somehow in this conversation, we're not told the exact words, but the thought is Mordecai told them, because I'm a Jew, I can't worship a man like that. We can understand that thought, can't we? I can respect you. I can, lift you up because of how great you are at sports or the job, but I'm not going to worship you, right? And you're not going to worship me. So Mordecai is seeing this man walk by every day, or whatever the occasion is, they pass each other at work. And he is not honoring, worshiping Haman the way he thinks it should be. Rephrase the thought here. Any of you had individuals at work or in your family that thought they deserved XYZ? This is due me, this is owe me, this is my place of honor and position, and the king has put me here, that kind of attitude. But what do we do? How do we react? Mordecai here, he's not going to bow. He's not going to give in. He's not going to do something that is sinful. So let's start with verse 7. Let's read here, and then again we'll come back and make some notes. All right, in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, the 12th year of the king of Ahasuerus, they cast pur. That is, they cast lots. Somebody give me a thought on that. What does it mean to cast lots? Divide up, partially correct. They section it by the days and the months and the years, but there's something else included in this. Okay, there's a decision to be made, so they section it up, and they're going to try to figure out what it is. The best illustration for us is we're going to roll the dice and see how they land. That's the phrase that seems to fit this idea most. They're going to cast lots, but for them it would be more in a religious, superstitious sense. And now this is very important for the impact of this story.
Casting lot not be a vote?
No, sir. This would be...
And when they selected the possible place,
Yeah.
they said they cast lots, and I
Well, it goes back to what the priests had with what was called the Urim and Thummim, and that was a way that they would divine God's will. And so it seems to be the apostles were kind of following after that same tradition of the priests and the leaders of that time. It's the idea that I'm going to leave it up to chance, because I might not know all the variables, but God does. And either way you look at it, even if we decide to choose, where's the influence going to come from? Who are we going to try to pick? The best individual. So in this sense, though, they're casting the bones in order to figure out the day. The reasoning for this is they thought, their gods were the best, the strongest, so they're going to let them guide them. So let's continue on here, and again, we'll make some notes of that in a second. They cast lots before Haman day after day, and they cast it month after month till the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Now, depending on how you read it and how it's set across to us, it could be that they kind of rolled the dice each day to figure out which day, or they kind of, what we were saying over here, sectioned it up and said, okay, this day, or this day, and then moved on to month and in that process. Either way, they're figuring out the date for when Haman's going to install this plot. So verse 8, then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every people, and they do not keep the king's laws. So it is not to the king's profit to tolerate them. Now, notice how he's phrasing this. Now, are all of these statements that he makes about the Jews correct? Yes and no, right? It's like us. What is the law that we follow first in life? God's law. But I'm also an American, so I have to follow American law. But I'm also live in Alabama, so I have to follow this state's laws, and then this, you get the process here. So the idea here is that there's this certain people that we've brought them in, and they're scattered throughout our kingdom. Go back to the beginning, the 127 provinces. And they are worth nothing to your people, or to us. They're causing nothing but problems and distress. Now, is that statement true? Were they causing problems for the nation, for King Ahasuerus? Who were they causing problems to in this moment? Haman. Now, they're a captive people, so I'm sure that there was some, rebellion. There was probably some pushback at some moments in time, but the point is, he's bringing it to the king's attention because it hurt his pride. Maybe go to our life and see the lengths that some are willing to go to for hurt pride, and how they will move heaven and earth and do things that are terrible, and when their ego is hurt. Haman has been destroyed or made fun of by Mordecai's unwillingness to serve him or bow to him. So their laws are different from those people. They do not keep the laws. It does not, or so that it is not to the king's profit to tolerate them. Now remember, again, Daniel and all of them had been taken captive for their wisdom, their knowledge, their wealth, their skill, their craftsmanship. And now, once they've been brought here and they've stayed for a good while, he's saying now they don't profit the king. Now we need to get them out. Again, what's changed? One man's opinion. So continue on verse 9. If it please the king, let it be decreed. Now, decreed, that's that statement. Go back to Vashti when, send out this decree. It's something that cannot be undone once it is sealed. So, make the decree that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hand of those who have charge of the king's business, that they may put it into the king's treasury, so that the king took his signet ring, gave it to Haman the Agagite, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, notice what is said here. The money is given to you, the people also, to do with them as it seems good to you. What authority does Haman have in this situation? Complete. How'd you phrase it? Complete. Total and utter, right? Whatever Haman decides to do, the king has said, you know what? It's beneath my notice. You go ahead and take care of it. I guess that's what you do for a king when you're second in command, right? You try to head off problems before they get to him. So the king is probably just kind of shoehorning this into Haman's regular duties. If you were a king and you had a group of people that didn't obey you and caused problems and rebellions and difficulties, what would you want done with them? Something to take care of them, set them off to the side, kill them all, whatever it is. Send them away. Yeah, something. But we're told the catalyst for this is none of those things. It is Haman's anger at being spited or not being worshipped. The signet rings given to him, again, a sign of authority. Nobody could speak out against him on this issue. The money, though, is what gets me. 10,000 talents of silver this man was willing to pay. Why? Again, revenge, a popped, deflated ego, right? I think I could think of a lot more things to do with, I'm just going to use dollars, $10,000, even though this would be more along the lines of millions or billions that he's giving.
He probably knew enough about the Jews to know, like all the people in the world now still know, they're pretty good about being bankers and making money. And he probably knew there's a lot of money out there they're fixing to confiscate. They can give some up to the king, it's nothing to everybody what they're going to get.
And that goes into what he decides to do later on with, we're not just going to kill them, but we're going to take everything they have and make it our own. But I wanted to go back to, these were the wise men, these were the craftsmen, these were the bankers, the merchants that were brought over. It wasn't just the poor and destitute. These were the people that had influence and wealth and could make something of themselves in a new land. So, lots of influence with this, and Haman's just doing what? Let's just sweep them under the rug. All right, verse 12. Very quickly, let's run through this because essentially all he's doing is sending this decree out. The king's scribe summoned on the 13th day of the month an edict according to all that Haman commanded, was written according to the king's satraps, the governors over all the provinces, and to the officials of the people, to every province in his own script and every people in his own language. It was written in the name of King Ahasuerus, sealed with a signet ring. Again, that's what was given earlier. This edict to destroy and kill the Jews is published among everybody in their own language. It cannot be taken back at this moment. Again, decreed, set into stone. Verse 13, letters were sent by the couriers to all the king's provinces with an instruction to, now listen to how it is described in this. I think whether these are the words or not that Haman used, whether these were the words in the actual decree, the important part for us is look how thoroughly it's described here. With instructions to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children. Now, who do you think is going to be destroyed in this? Everyone, right? Doesn't matter if you've got money, doesn't matter if you have wealth, doesn't matter if you are the king's wife. Everyone falls under this banner of destruction and annihilation and having all of your goods and wealth taken away. Even to the extent of it's not just take your kids away from you and make them our servants and slaves as like what had happened before, right? It's let's just get rid of and be done with it. Now, just a question or just a thought for you. What if an edict from our government went out that said you can no longer be Christians? All Christians who can be proven to be so will be put to death. What might you start to do? Quit being an optimist for a second. I'm going to start thinking, okay, where are my kids? Where is a back hole that we can go and, hide in till whatever happens blows over? Do we have enough food? Do we have weapons? Again, we understand that thought process. So these Jews are given this decree in a land that they have lived in for generations. And now all of a sudden, because you're a Jew, nothing you can do about that, right? That's just who your parents are. Through no fault of your own, you're being killed, destroyed, murdered, annihilated. Now, continue on. It gives us the day there. In one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, to plunder all their goods. Now, here's the really important part about that. Remember, they cast lots. They're picking out this day through relying on their deities. Well, guess what day they picked? The day before Passover. What is one of the most important remembrances of the Jews' lives? How God helped us to escape Egypt, right? How God passed over us. So for the Jew, this is terrible. Not only do we have to flee, not only do we have to hide, not only do we have to figure out what to do, it's right before our most important feast day of the year, when we should come together and honor God and remember what He's done. Now for Haman, this is great, right? It is the perfect revenge. On the day that should be the most holy, you're going to be fearful and terrified for your life. But we know how the story ends, so it makes it a lot more powerful, but in a different way, right? But Haman's thinking, this is showing that our gods are more powerful than the Jews' gods. Because now I've gotten into this position where, now I can kill them and do whatever I want. Excuse me, verse 15 now. The couriers went out hurriedly by order of the king. The decree was issued in Susa, the citadel. Now, before there's some mention about them being in a different place other than Susa. Susa is the main capital, but there is or are a few other places that they would kind of travel around and, summer here, winter there kind of thing. Some will take this thought as a contradiction and kind of run with it and do some weird things with it, but it's not a contradiction. There's just different places the king might be. So he sent it out from the city, or it went out to, issued in Susa, the citadel, or the capital. And the king and Haman did what? Somebody read that real loud for me. All right. Somebody, give me your thought on that. What does your mind picture when you hear that phrase? Okay. Seems like they're happily sitting down to do this, right? Anybody else? I don't know why, but my mind goes to a restaurant scene where two guys, you're sitting down over a real fancy meal and you're toasting your drink, and they have the big cigars out their mouth and they're all, I don't know why, but here are two men sitting down toasting, drinking food, eating and drinking, being happy, celebrating, and what have they just decided? Go back to what, all those descriptive words, right? They are going to be destroying people. I think that gives us a mindset of what kind of people these are as well, right? What good, honest, upstanding person, even by the world's standards, would sit down and toast after deciding this? Mm-hmm. They didn't care as long as, again, the king, the guy that was in control, as long as he was happy, as long as he was insulated from the problems. Sir?
I said even
Yes, or at least a very warped sense of morality. Because again, I think it goes into that attitude, though, of if I'm deity, then I can do whatever I want, right? It doesn't matter if it's my dad. I'm going to kill him and I'm going to take his place because, even go back to Greek mythology, that's what they did. But is that the way we are? Is that the way again, am I better than you because I stand in this position and you sit in the pews? Does that make me a better, stronger? No. That just means we have different roles to play. We have different parts to fill. We have different parts of the body that we are. Back to our thought, though. They sit down to eat and drink. But now notice what is happening in the city, in the capital of the Persian Empire. Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was thrown into confusion. I just love that imagery there, don't you? These two men deciding upon their fates, the king trusting in his advisor, not correctly, but trusting in him to do the right thing. This advisor, because his ego wasn't appeased, have decided to destroy the nation of the Jews. And they sit down and think how great we've done. Look at the good day we've accomplished a lot. And in the city, in the capital, there is mass chaos and confusion because, again, go back. The Jews weren't just the poor, but they would have been, over the generations, intermingled and come into positions of power and influence and things like that.
Yeah, the Jews didn't have any influence over the country, even the capital city. People weren't paying attention to it. So what? No big deal, ain't us. But instead, they were evidently quite upset about,
It goes to show how ingrained the Jews had become in the society, or inseparable, maybe. I don't know the right word to use to describe that. Any of those, all of those, whatever way, the city is thrown into confusion. Now, as a governor or as a king, what's probably one of the worst things that can happen to your capital? For it to be overrun, for there to be chaos, for there to be confusion, it makes it look bad from the world's standpoint. So we have this very thing happening, but the king and his advisors are sitting back toasting. Again, I've just seen that. It's just always an odd image that's painted there.
Not urgency that you go. And I don't think it's talking about everybody. To me, it seems like it's talking about everyone, not just you. Everybody saying, what's going on?
Well, include in this thought of that this nation was built on captivity. They would conquer a state, grab the people that were the best at things, and bring them back to the capital. So the Jews are upset, but what about, let's say, the Chaldean group that had been overrun? What might happen to them when Haman gets upset again? So there's probably some of that as well. Well, if they can go after them, they could come after me as well. Rightfully so, confusion and problems that are going on here. Now, let's move into chapter 4. I'll try to get through the first 3 verses tonight, and then we'll set us up for the rest of 4. Excuse me. Now, when Mordecai learned all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ash, went out into the midst of the city, and cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one was allowed to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. And in every province, everywhere the king's command and his decree reached, there was a great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and lamenting, and many of them laying in sackcloth and ashes. So these verses are setting up, it's not just the capital, right? But where is this mourning and confusion found? Everywhere there's a population of the Jews, right? Now again, this was a nation built on the way they would subjugate people. is if I take all the good, smart leaders and put them right where I can watch them, then the ones that are left over can't fight back. So, I've gathered all these people here. I've got all of this wealth and all of this. And then he would scatter them around. One group here, one group there. That group goes this way. Again, mix and match. So all over this country, there are Jews crying out, lamenting. Let your mind wander for a second. What would you do if you were a Jew hearing this decree made? That's where my mind goes. Again, where's my kids? Where's my guns? Where's our food? Where's the hole? Or how can we get out? Or whatever. But maybe we sit down for the afternoon and just weep and cry, right? Maybe we moan and bewail what our kids are going to miss out on. Again, let your mind wander for a second.
And then they cannot do anything because they are scattered in 157 provinces. So, and that was the mindset of all these kings and conquerors. You split them up.
Exactly.
You don't let them get together so they can.
So you take that thought, you're sitting this way. If that happens, who are you going to be thinking about first? Who are you going to get in a disaster? Oh, well, yeah, I'll say my mind goes to my wife and my kids first, like I've been saying. Most often, except for brave and virtuous people, I guess, we think of our families. Now, if I saw all of you in my journey to wherever I'm going, I'd probably help you, give you whatever I could. But so you've got these group of dispersed people that are in a place that they've been for generations, but now they're about to be slaughtered. Where do you go? Can't go back home because, back to the Holy Lands, because it still belongs to them. It's still a place that I'd be put to death. So I've got to flee either to somewhere I don't know, or I gather together and maybe try to fight back. But like you said, they're all mixed up. There's really no way that they could do this in the time that's given, in a way that, Haman wouldn't stop beforehand. So what do? Weep and cry. Lament, sackcloth and ashes. Think of how that would play out in our day and age. Maybe we would get online and say, do you hear what's happening? Look at what's going on. What am I supposed to do with my family? Maybe we call our, people in office. But what realistically could we do? What realistically could the Jews do to fight back against this? Nothing.
We'd pray. We'd have a prayer service. Yeah. We'd be,
exactly.
We'd be gathering everybody together. Be like all pray.
Count it all joy, right? When you fall in. And I think that's the reason why we could do that, and why Mordecai could make a statement that he made at the end. And it was essentially, I'll jump ahead since we're running out of time, but I think it's end of chapter 4, or the end of this chapter. He essentially says something to the effect of, if we don't do it, God's still going to deliver his people somehow. So what can we do? The small things that we can do, right? But prayer, a mind of saying, God, help us. God, we don't know the way. We can't figure out how to get past the king and his guards and Haman and his vengeance and anger. So God, we're weeping, we're praying, we're lamenting, sackcloth and ashes. Help us.
But they didn't run. And we should not run when that happens either. What does that say?
Absolutely. You figured out where I was going with it, didn't you? No, that's perfect. Because it's this thought of, what had they done wrong in this instance? What had Mordecai done wrong in that instance? Not a thing, by God's standards. Now, why were the Jews where they were to begin with? Because ancestors, great-great-great-grandma, how many ever it would be for, whichever one it is, they decided to rebel against God. And so they were in this nation, not unjustly, by the decree of God, if you will, but not through any fault of their own. But God was with them. Yeah, the ancestors, they messed up, and God was punishing them by sending them into captivity. But God recognizes that these people didn't do anything wrong in the instance. So God's going to be there with them. The point I'm trying to make with this is God punishes us, yes. We might have to go through our captivities, our deal with our past, or deal with our mistakes. But where is God going to be through these moments? When we face problems, when those sins or temptations arise. Where's He going to be? Right with me, right where I need Him to be, right? So,
You know, God is never mentioned in Esther, but you can see Him working behind the scenes. When you're talking about when they cast lots, fell upon the 12th month, you can see that gave them time to work the situation out.
Everywhere in this book, you can see God working behind the scenes. Amen. It's this amazing thing of how why did Esther's parents die? This is all supposition at this point, so just bear with me for a second. Why did Esther's parents die? Are we given a reason? No. Why did Mordecai adopt her? I mean, she's family, but we're not given a reason, right? How did Esther end up being in the king's palace? But there's all these decisions behind the scenes, right? There's all this life that's happening, but God is seen through each of these moments. And I think that's how we need to look at our life as well. Any of you know what tomorrow is going to hold? Do you know what tomorrow is going to bring? I have some guesses. I have some plans, but I'm not the one that decides. So what do? How do I live? How do I approach life? What does God want me to do? Read, study to show myself approved. Figure out what God's teachings are so I can make those applications to my life. Here we have Esther and Mordecai that are placed in a position that is very odd, to say the least, to go from, an outcast, dispersed Jew, and now Esther sitting at the, right beside the king, and Mordecai seems to be sitting at the gate having a position of, if not authority, at least respect, at least some kind of authority. But they just happened to be in just the right places that God's people needed at just the right time to save God's people from what happened. What's the statement? There's too many coincidences. You brought up, Maury, how, do we have a bell in here, or do I just get to keep teaching? Anybody know? All right, good. I get to keep teaching then. I'll finish with this thought. I forgot my thought. My joke took over. Well, I'll remember it for next week, and we'll start out that way then. We have this beautiful story. Oh, yeah, I remembered it now. Thank you, Maury, for reminding me. God's not mentioned in this story. And while we might not see God in our life, He's always there, right? That's the mindset I want you to take away from tonight. Any thoughts or comments before we close? All right, appreciate your time and attention. We'll pick up on verse number 4 of chapter 4 next week.